record. Okay, hello, good evening. I am Ellie, and we just want to welcome everyone. I'm Ellie Wyndham, and I'm the founder and program manager for Walking Other People's Shoes, and I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. And Walking Other People's Shoes strives to empower women of color voices by providing transformative experiences through storytelling and community. And I'm happy that you are all come and join us. I'm so excited to see some familiar faces and some new faces with us tonight. And this is a virtual free book club for children, parents, educators, and anyone who wants to have a deeper dive into themed activities and concepts around race, identity, and culture. We have a we share our themed activities and stacked ideas. And I want to introduce you to our two facilitators, but we have our regular facilitator out tonight, but we will have a special guest, which I'm going to introduce you after I introduce Mia. Mia Wen Chen is our lead facilitator for our book club, and Mia blogs on parenting, children's books, and education at pragmaticmom.com. And she's also the co-creator of the Multicultural Children's Book Day. It's a nonprofit celebrating diversity in children's books, and she's based in the Boston area. Our activities facilitator that a regular one is that normally comes. Her name is Ruth, and she's our activities facilitator, and she's a sophomore at Lehman College, and she's pursuing a bachelor's in speech pathology and audiology, followed by a master's in speech pathology. These degrees will allow her to continue her work in schools, providing extra support and speech to students with special needs, and she's based in the Bronx. We have our special guest facilitator, activities facilitator, Portia Jones. She's an experienced educator, and she is specialized in special education. You can follow us on Instagram, Walking Other People's Shoes, to follow any of our news and updates, or you can, subscribe our newsletter. There you go, to get our monthly newsletter as well. So I want to pass it along to Mia to introduce us with the book of the month.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for coming. Okay, so June has a couple of holidays. June 1st, of course, kicks off Pride Month. So I have two books for that, but June is also Juneteenth. And I just want to share, I have this new book that came that was so beautiful, A Flag for Juneteenth. We do have a Juneteenth event that's recorded and it's up. If anyone wants another Juneteenth, it was like maybe our first year. We had Carol Boston Weatherford, and that was awesome. So I just wanted to mention that. But for Pride Month, I have two books because they're both by Michael Genhart. And we had this one as sort of the, like our image. And, it's a great sort of book for preschoolers, like Rainbow, our first book, Pride. It's a more simple, covers the colors and a little bit about pride. But I actually really love this book. They're So Flamboyant. So that's what we're going to use as well. But we can talk to Michael about both. He has several books, and they're all, I think, in the LGBTQ themed. And then just for my giveaway, last year we also did Pride Month, and I did like rainbow color snacks, and they were all like not so healthy. So this year I thought I would concentrate on activities. So this is actually colored pencils, and then the lead is multicolored rainbow. So I thought it's super pretty, and it'd be great for adults or kids to draw, like any kind of, because summer's coming up. And then this, especially like my kids always like this. These are like those scratchers, and this is like notebook size. I mean, sorry, like Post-it note size. So it's a whole box of them for ages 3 and up, and you just like scratch. It's like scratch art, and it's rainbow underneath. So we got our rainbow themed activities. And so I'm just going to share, part of this book. Usually, as always, I just share like my favorite pages because I don't want to violate any copyright. But I think I'm going to read parts of it, and you can see, like, I just thought this was so clever. So they're so flamboyant by Michael Genhart, a PhD, a therapist, and it's illustrated by Tony Neal, and it's published by Imagination Press, and that is the American Psychological Association. They have their own company. So flamboyant, of a person or bird or their behavior tending to attract attention because of their confidence, exuberance, and stylishness. When a flamboyance of flamingos flew into the neighborhood, a gaggle of geese gathered to gab. Flamingos, really? In our backyard? A congress of crows convened to call. Well, there goes the neighborhood. And a dole of doves discuss their descent. Our peace has been totally disrupted. So there's a few other pages of other birds groups who are also very unhappy with this development. And it continues. A scream of swifts shrieked. Enough with all this flamboyance. And the unkindness of ravens was just kind of unkind. Cock, stay in your own neighborhood, gawk. So again, there's like more pages of like different birds in their groupings complaining. Finally, a band of jays decided it was time for the neighbors to flock together. All kinds of birds. And they decide to go over to the flamingo's house. A waddle of penguins brought up the rear as a venue of vultures ventured over. If only we had legs like those flamingos. This is making us hungry. Leftovers, anyone? So they kind of make this like parade, but like, you know, it's not the friendliest parade. And suddenly they get to the house. Suddenly the door swung wide open. Here they all are. Then the friendly flamboyance of flamingos exclaimed, "Come on in, everyone. You're just in time for the party." And they have like this sign that says, "Welcome to our new home." Because the flamingos this whole time have been like going through the town and carrying stuff. And no one really knew like what they were doing. They just had like a lot of stuff. Because when the flamboyance of flamingos flew into the neighborhood, everyone was welcome. We raised the roof, we turned it pink, we got rid of the closets and widened the doors and windows. How neighborly. Differences don't have to be scary. Really, a party for us? They are lovely. We sure didn't see this coming. Why were we getting so worked up about? Or what were we getting so worked about? Didn't we jump to conclusions? And so I just thought this story was so clever. Like, so we have all the different birds with their different groupings, which he used. And then I was like, wait, is this a book about misunderstandings and like, you know, bias and judging? But is it also like a good book for Pride Month? Because I was like, is it flamboyant kind of? So anyway, he does have it in his endnote where he says, indirectly, they're so flamboyant also refers to being flamboyant, a word traditionally used in a derogatory sense to describe someone who is gay. This story playfully reclaims the word and shows that flamboyant flamingos as gracious and neighborly, modeling positive and welcoming behavior for other birds. It should be noted, however, that it is not the responsibility of those being discriminated against to make others comfortable. The flamingos don't change who they are and shouldn't have to. Instead, it is the other birds who change by spending time with and learning about their new neighbors. And so it goes on to say about conversations with children about assumptions and stereotypes. It's like so important, to fight back against bias. And I mean, I think he just does this in such a clever way, because it's first of all, you have like every kind of bird, and you can learn about the bird because he does have this, kind of sampling of bird groupings. And then you have also that whole animal grouping, like that whole like interesting quirk of the English language where we name each type of animal group by some kind of word. Sometimes it's related to them, sometimes it's not. But he picked out the ones that are like so appropriate for the story. So even if it's just focusing on the story about birds and these groupings that we use in English, that is just an interesting thing. And then it has this whole other story about what happens when someone new moves into town. And, neighbors don't like change and they freak out because, the house is pink or the neighbors look different. And then is that sort of the go-to reaction? And I think Michael, because he is a therapist, a PhD in psychology, he's like modeling a different choice. So he's saying, even if that's your, knee-jerk reaction of like, oh my God, things are changing, it's so terrible. He's modeling like, okay, well, get to know, don't make a judgment too quickly, get to know them. And then he offers also, like when you're, when you're the new person, you don't have to change, but they're also modeling how welcoming and inclusive they are. So they may not have noticed, or they may have, the flamingos, that people were kind of gossiping about them. And, no one was like really greeting them when they were going back and forth. But even if they noticed, it didn't make them not want to put out the welcome mat and to throw this like nice party. Because the whole time, actually, what they were doing is gathering up all the supplies and plans to throw this welcome party. So I just felt like on every level, like, what a beautiful story, and funny to boot. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's a great story because it makes you laugh, and then it makes you think, and then it plants that idea in your head. Like, wait, because when I saw it, I was like, they're so flamboyant, it must be an LGBTQ story, which, just from the title. And then I was like, wait, no, it's about flamingos. And then I was like, wait, no, it's about birds. Like, I don't think it is. And then I was like, okay, let me get the book and read it. And then I was like, it's hidden in there, So, so for me too, to prejudge the book and say, just because I know Michael does a lot of work in, in the LGBTQ space. So like on every level, like I find myself guilty of it. But it's kind of like Michael's kind of saying, it's okay though. Like, it's okay if that's your first reaction. It's really more your second, your third, your fourth, like what you do that matters. So anyway, I just kind of love it. I'll quickly show you Pride, Rainbow, first book of Pride. Because I think this is also a great book. It's celebrating rainbows, which now are under attack at certain, department or certain stores. And so, at first blush, it's just a story about, colors and associations of colors, yellow is sunshine, green is nature. And then he just says, like, everyone loves rainbows. And just a very subtle message about rainbows. Sing out, be happy, be loved, be proud. So just another like subtle story about acceptance and being proud of who you are. And, so Michael will be joining us in 20 minutes right after our activity. And now I'm going to pass it off to Portia.
Thank you, Mia. I love both of these books because they're so appropriate and I think inclusive for many children and just people. And so the activity that I'm going to do is pretty simple in terms of the materials that you would need. So all I have here is, well, it's just a piece of paper. I know my background might be covering it, and something to draw with. And so I've got some crayons here. If you want to use markers or you want to use something else, that's totally okay. I think I saw a little friend here. So if any of our young friends want to join us, by all means, please do. But I'm going to try to actually incorporate both of the books into the activity. So I think that they actually go really well together. So when I thought about the word flamboyant, I thought about being proud of what makes us different and what makes us special. So I think at the heart, that's what flamboyant really means. And so I think about me. What are the things that make me really special and unique, and the things that I'm really proud of? And one thing that came to mind that I know people have told me has been different before has been the color of my skin. I've been told that I'm different because of the color of my skin, but I also know that I'm really proud of the color of my skin. I think it's a really pretty color. So I am going to go into my crayon box, and I've got my beautiful brown crayon here, and I'm going to draw my face that represents what makes me special, my brown skin. So I'm going to color that in here. And I'm thinking, what's something else that makes me really special? Well, I know that I have curly, dark hair. Not everyone has curly, dark hair. So that's something that makes me special. I'm going to take out my black crayon because that's closest to the color of my hair. And I'm going to make those curls on my paper. And while I'm doing that, I'd love to hear from anyone here. What is something that makes you really special? What's something that makes you really, really special? You can feel free to come off of mute to share with the group. It could be what you're wearing, something about you, or what you like to do. Those are all things that are very special. And don't be shy. Hi, Michael.
Hey, hello. I didn't know if you meant anyone could answer that, or
Yes, please do. It's free and open for the group.
being a gay dad, being of coming from a multicultural family. Yeah, I think being an author, I think you can point to a number of things.
Those are all really special things. So if you were doing this activity with me, maybe you might draw a picture of your children because you're a dad, or some of the books that you wrote because that you love to write. Maybe you might draw yourself with a pride flag because of your identity. There's so many things that make us so special. I know one thing that I like to do that I think is something that not everyone does is I really like to paint. It's something that makes me feel really calm. I also like music, so I can draw that too. I can draw some little music notes here. I can draw myself holding a paintbrush because that's something that makes me feel really happy. And I'm going to put a nice big smile on my face because I'm proud. I'm really proud of the things that make me unique and that make me special. So I'm going to draw my paintbrush here and I'll hold it up in a second.
So I could add, I also like to paint and I like to do watercolors. But I also started growing plants from seed. So I have in the back here basil, which I grew from seed, and I have Japanese cucumbers from seed. So maybe draw a green thumb
Yeah.
holding a paintbrush.
I love that. Mia, I might have to draw a brown thumb because I'm not as lucky in that department. But that's just something that all makes us different. We all have different expertise in different things. And that's just something that makes us really special. So I've got myself here so far. You can see my curly hair, me holding my paintbrush. I've got a smile on my face because I'm really proud of the things that make me flamboyant or that make me different and special. And if we wanted to add a bonus, if I could share my screen. Yes, okay. I also love the meanings of the colors that we read about in the book Rainbow, because it reminded me of other things that I love and that I have connection to. And so something that I love being around is nature, and something that comes to mind is green grass. I love putting my bare feet in the green grass so I can draw that green grass. What are some other things that are green? Anyone can come off of mute to share.
Trees are green.
Sorry, what's that, Ellie?
Trees.
Trees. So I could draw a tree in my picture.
Yeah.
I see that yellow represents sunlight, and I love being outside in the sun. I can imagine myself painting outside in the sunlight. So I'm going to draw that yellow to represent sunlight. So pretty. So here's my yellow sunlight over here and my green grass. I'm so sorry that my background is spoiling it a little bit. I thought about harmony, and something that I think about when I think of harmony is the sound that the birds make. And you could draw a picture in blue of those pretty birds, or even some of the birds that we read about from the book Flamboyant, like that beautiful pink flamingo too. I thought about healing. Something that really gives me healing, and that orange healing that we read about are flowers. Sometimes when I smell flowers, it makes me feel really calm when I am upset and frustrated. And so I love having flowers around me. So I'm going to draw those pretty flowers too in orange. And there are many other things that might be healing. Maybe talking with your parents might give you some healing. Maybe exercising is something that gives you healing. Maybe chatting with a best friend is something that gives you healing. There are many things that can give us healing. So here I am. I've got my pretty orange flowers because that's what's healing for me. And if I were doing this with children, I would just have this kind of picture up in case they wanted a reminder for what all of the different colors meant and how they could represent it in their picture. When I do color drawings with students, especially since we're talking about being proud or being flamboyant, I do think it's really important that if they're drawing themselves, they try to represent themselves as accurately as possible to who they are. In the past, so I'm a former lower elementary school teacher. I've taught kindergarten for a few years, and I've had some students who identified as Latinx. And when I asked them the color of their skin, because they had light skin, they would say white. And I held up a piece of blank paper and I said, white, is that actually what you look like? And so we found a crayon that better represented their skin tone. So I think that's also a part of being proud, is thinking about what is really unique to you, what makes you different, and what makes you special. But I also like the incorporation of these new meanings for different colors in our life. So that's my picture. And I'm sure that other folks can think of other ideas too. Here's another representation. The red for life. I've got a ladybug and a butterfly. And picture of me saying how proud I am of who I am and what makes me different and what makes me so special. So that I'm going to pause and end the activity there. But Michael, I just really appreciate the books here. And Nia, thank you for sharing those 2 books. They have, I think, such resonance for making kids feel really special in a time when they might not always feel included. So thank you.
So I'll just share some of the comments. Danielle said, I can tell when something is wrong with my friend, even if they don't say anything. So I think that's something that she's proud of. Ellie says, I love that you have a flamingo. You have flamingos in the background and one on your shoulder, to Michael. Danielle says, I also play flute and have a concert tomorrow night. Oh, that's incredible. Ellie says, I love this theme of being proud of yourself. And then when Portia asked about other things that are green, Danielle said delicious vegetables, and Rosika said avocados. So those were great, more great ideas. Does anyone want to share anything they drew or any other ideas? Okay, well, we can move on to our special guest, Dr. Michael Genhart. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So I love both of the books, but I just thought They're So Flamboyant was so clever on so many different levels. The fact that you had all different kinds of birds and you used like the name of the groupings, and they kind of perfectly fit into the story. And that also, it was a story about inclusiveness as well as bias. And it was also a very gentle way of modeling behavior. Like if you, because for me, I was saying that when I knew most of your books had LGBTQ themes. So when I saw the title, I was like, oh, that must be LGBTQ theme book. And then I was like, just from the title. Then I looked at the cover. I was like, wait, no, it's about flamingos, pink flamingos. Like, it's not. And then I read the book and I was like, wait, is it? And then I was like, read the end note and I was like, it's just very subtle. Like, you know what I mean? So I feel like I went through the same series of emotions as some of the birds, where I had a bias and I had a certain preconceived idea and it was wrong. And then I had to adjust and say like, okay, wait, that was not right. And then, kind of go through the whole, ups and downs. And I guess your message is sort of like, it's okay if your initial reaction is, maybe you have ingrained bias, but it's more important to sort of work through that, get to know the book, get to know the people, and then, you know what I mean? Keep learning. But I just want to, what's the story behind the story? How did you come up with this idea?
Well, thank you for your kind words about the book. It started, I had written another manuscript called Flamboyant Boy, just because I loved that the word boy was in the middle of the word flamboyant. And I really liked that story, but my editor said, oh, I had written it at a time when other titles had come out that were super popular, like Juliana's the Mermaid and Sparkle Boy. And so my editor said, this has to really rock and to compete with those titles. And so I thought, I'll put it on hold, which I did for a little bit. And during that time, I discovered, I don't know where exactly, that a group of flamingos was called a flamboyance. I didn't know that. And after I learned that, I thought, oh my God, there's a book in there. And so I just started doing research on other bird group names, not being a birder, and they were hysterical. I just started writing them down. They're so funny. I think birders are funny, I guess, and have a lot of time in their hands too, because the bird group has different names depending on if it's in flight, if it's crossing a body of water, if it's sitting on the ground. So you can have the same birds have multiple names depending on the activity. I thought that was interesting too. Anyway, I just started writing down all the different bird group names, and as you suggested, Mia, the story kind of wrote itself, I have to say, as I was just staring at the names, because by that point I had decided I wanted to write a story about prejudice and about discrimination, but for kids, which means you have to do it with a light touch. It also has to be entertaining, right? And sort of funny. Well, the bird group names were already funny. And so I just started kind of playing with the story, and I wanted to ultimately have the story be about, as you were saying before, since we all have biases, we all do. I wanted a story that ended with a kind of confrontation, not of the flamingos, because they were just doing their own thing. They were doing what the neighbors should have been doing, creating a welcoming party. So it led to this sort of confrontation of one's own bias, right? That's what kids take away, I think, in addition to the goofiness of the birds and all that. So yeah, that's the background of the story. It started as other manuscript, and putting it aside, which I recommend, right? And then coming back to it, and then other discoveries as you do research. And then I had in mind what the structure would be. And I just had a lot of fun with the storytelling, because again, the bird group names are just so funny.
Your lessons are so gentle. Is that part of your like therapist background, or, because, there's always the humor, or like inclusiveness. There's always, sort of such a warmth and gentleness that when the message comes, it's easier to look at yourself and go, "Oh, I was wrong," because it's so like gentle, it's
Yeah,
not
well,
like
that's
accusatory, or like you
Mhm.
sort of model it so nicely.
Thank you. Yeah,
That
I
must be very deliberate, or is that like your training, or?
totally deliberate, and I think, yeah, part of my training, and also my training as someone who writes books for kids, because no one wants to read something that's super message heavy, right? And so you do have to develop a lightness to it. And I also think that an effective picture book for kids and grown-ups, really, because they're the ones that read the book over and over and over again, is a book that has layers to it, right? So I really kind of go for gentle, with a message, but with layers that you pick up on with subsequent readings, right? And hopefully they're discussion points, right, between parents or teachers, educators, and the kids that they read to. So I hope kids take away maybe different things with each reading, because of the gentleness, right? I think it allows kids to enter the story and be in it in a more curious way, right? Because it's gentle and not heavy.
So you're a busy guy, you're a dad, you have a therapy practice. What was your writing journey? What made you decide to write children's books? And how long did it take, or how did you go about becoming like a published author?
Mm-hmm. I started thinking about writing books for kids when my daughter Gabby was applying for college. She's now 27, by the way, and a fifth grade teacher, which we're super proud of, that we raised a teacher. Anyway, I thought, oh gosh, she's going to be gone. And I spent a lot of time with her and volunteering at her schools, in the libraries, of course. And so I thought, what else could I do? Even though I have a full-time practice and very happy with my work there. And so I just sort of toyed with the idea of writing the books that brought me back to that time when I read to her. That was really one of the big pulls for me. We loved that time. She would not like me repeating this, but there are times when she comes home even now and wants me to read some of her favorite picture books to her. And I think it's just a return to the magic of that time. So for me, it was about, oh, what's my next challenge? And it was about coming back to that time of her childhood that was gone, that I could sort of touch, through writing picture books. I did not know how hard it was. It is not easy. They're deceptively simple, right? Good picture books. And so in terms of my path, I became a student of the craft. I spent 2 or 3 years going to conferences and workshops and just listening before I lifted a pencil or typed a word. I just became a student. And then I just started writing lots of really bad stories, and feeling okay about that. Well, kind of crummy, but also okay. Knowing that, look, anything that you want to do and do well, you're going to start out as a novice, of course, a student. And then I started working with a freelance editor, Amy Noveski, who is a very prolific writer, and local to me here. And I met her at a local bookstore, was doing an open critique of picture book manuscripts, and she was leading it. And I was terrified, but I went to present my first really bad story. And she was delightful. Everyone was delightful, right? I found a community that was supportive and sweet and smart and wanting to give to kids through storytelling, which was super appealing to me. Anyway, so then I just started working with Amy for a number of years, and she taught me a lot about the craft. I didn't have a critique group. I knew about them, but I don't know why. I just didn't. I'm now in an incredible critique group that with creators that are super talented. Anyway, I got my first break, I think, as a psychologist because my first books were published by Imagination Press, which is the children's imprint of the American Psychological Association. And my first book was called Ouch Moments. It's about microaggressions between kids. And Christine Enderly, the editor there, just became a fan. And she just said, send me anything else that you write. So we published so far 9 books together. And so they've been incredibly helpful. And then I started branching out because I wanted to tap into other identities as a gay dad, these 2 books, and I also wrote one called Love is Love. And then I started writing books through or in reference to being a kid who grew up in a multicultural home. So my first book there is called Accordionly, the story of a little boy who brings the 2 cultures of his family together through the music of the accordion with the help of his opa and his abuelo. Because my dad played the accordion, that was that influence. And then I wrote May Your Life Be Deliciosa, which is a tradition I grew up with. My favorite day of the year was the day before Christmas, where we would assemble for a tamalada and just make tamales. But to me, it was about family coming together, a tradition. But the best part was the storytelling, because you're sitting around a table, multiple generations. There are no recipes, right? And so you learn by watching. And my grandmother and my aunt, my mom would just tell all these stories. Some of them were like spooky and weird, and some were funny, and there's music playing and dancing. So it was just so fun. So that's what that book is about. And my latest book that's about to come out is called Spanish is the Language of My Family. And it's based on stories my mom told me when I was little, where her first language is Spanish. When she started public school in California, Spanish was not allowed. In fact, kids were humiliated and punished for speaking Spanish. There was a 50-year period in US history where this was the law, and different states exercised the law or executed the law differently. The American Southwest was pretty brutal to the kids, and so there was a lot of trauma. The net of that is a lot of those kids grew up and did not speak Spanish to their children, did not want them to go through the same shaming. So this is the story. Believe it or not, when I thought about writing this story, I thought, I'm not going to write that, for kids. Back to, gentle and not being message heavy. And so when I was doing research for that, I discovered there's a National Spanish Spelling Bee. It's like 10 years old now. I didn't know about it. And so that's when my light bulb went off. I thought, I'm going to tell this story through a kid who enters the Spanish Spelling Bee. He studies the words with his grandmother. When they studied together, she shares with him what her experience was, but I tell her story through the spelling words that he's studying. So it's very subtle. And the spelling words progress over the course of the story. So you get her story through the spelling words, right? So it's very gentle that way, but what's happening. And the ending, I won't give away, but it's a celebration ultimately of family, of culture, and of the language. That's what I really wanted it to be about. But it starts out as a harsh story, but a real part of American history. Anyway, so that's maybe more than you wanted to hear about my path. Yeah.
So the piece of American history that you talked about in your book, like, I didn't know that. I grew up in California. Like, that's not in our history book. These are like these hidden moments of history, perhaps what people call critical race theory, I assume. But like that, and I find it so helpful to learn about it, but like I'm literally learning about it from picture book to picture book, because it wasn't, in the history books. I studied history in college. It was not in those books. And it's so important, and also I feel like a picture book can tell that story to an adult as well as to a child in like kind of a way that we all can understand it, and then we can all go like, wait, why didn't we learn that? Like, I didn't know that.
Well, I think that particular story, not knowing about it, and again, I knew about it just because my mom would share it when I was little. I think not knowing about it is a reflection of the erasure that took place. The kids were told, your culture, your language this is like disgusting, but ugly, bad, and dirty. Those were the words. The kids were told, and do not speak your language here, only English. They were called only English laws. English was the language of instruction, period. This is long before the Bilingual Education Act, which passed in '68. And so there was an attempt at erasure, right? And that's why you don't read about it in history books. But if you ask a lot of Latin looking people who don't speak Spanish, I bet many of them will tell you about relatives who of a certain era who were shamed and humiliated, and who, as I said before, ended up not carrying the language forward in their families.
No,
Yeah.
your story is so important. I'm so thankful it's coming out.
Mm.
So today is Pride, the beginning of Pride Month, and I was wondering if you could, I was wondering if you can give us just like some, like, you know, like your perspective or your tips on how can we be good allies, or what are some of the things that we should be thinking about, or what we can do, you know? I mean, especially now, I just feel like you know, like we're all under siege, but especially the gay community.
Mhm.
And maybe it's like not in our town, you know what I mean? Or it's not overtly in our town, but like what can we do? Like, you know, like I feel like
Good question.
showing up today, like but like maybe that's not enough. What else can we do?
I think there are a lot of things. Just as an anecdote, I got an email. I mean, as a writer, we all get letters and notes from teachers and kids and librarians, and that's super fun. I got one yesterday from a librarian in Michigan who wrote and said, I love your book. They're so flamboyant. Thank you for writing it. I'm writing to you, not just to tell you that, but because sadly, that book, among others, has been pulled and is among the challenged books in our area. She went on to tell me the process that challenged books go through if they ultimately are banned and yanked from schools. And the process starts with a bunch of librarians get together and they first review the books that are being challenged to see if they meet certain criteria. And she said, your book was read first among all these librarians who all loved the book. And the response was they went out and bought a ton of books for their library, a ton of this book for their libraries. And so she went on to tell me the rest of the process. But in terms of answering your question, I think I would buy queer themed books and donate them to schools and local libraries, right? So that kids have access to these stories.
Little free libraries too. That's okay.
Yeah, I think, you know, wherever kids have access to books, and perhaps especially those states, you know, where, you know, they're being challenged and being pulled. I'm part of a group of writers that pulled resources and funds together, and we bought a ton of queer themed books and shipped them to agencies in Texas, in Florida, various other states, Idaho, I think, that serve the queer community in different communities, and ask them to disperse them to local families, queer families.
Oh, that's perfect. Is there any way you can share like how we can join you? Are you guys going to do
I can send you that. I can send you that information, but that, I think just getting you know, books out there. I think in terms of being an ally, I think modeling inclusivity and just being a good person, and in terms of the queer community, being a good friend and a good listener, right, of people's stories, and being supportive of whatever needs, you know, that person or family has. So I think just being an open, inclusive, supportive person in life, because I think people sense that energy, of course, and you become a safe person, right, to people who are questioning or maybe feeling unsafe. So I think being that person in the world is a huge plus. I know as a young kid, I would gravitate to someone, right, who showed that kind of caring and sensitivity and safety. Like, who wouldn't? So I think being that person in the world is super helpful. What else? I think supporting, especially if you're a parent of young kids, queer curriculum in schools, right? Whatever, teachers, librarians need in the way of resources, parents are a huge resource, especially in public schools that are so limited. Teachers, again, now the father of a 5th grade teacher teaching at a Title I school, I hear every day how difficult that is for her and how limited the resources are. So, being a parent and or even if you're not a parent, how can I help out in my local public schools around these issues? Is, I think teachers would and librarians totally appreciate that. So those are some things that come to mind.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Does anyone have questions? Let me open it up to questions for Michael.
I think there was a question in the chat that was talked about. Rashika said, I really like the message in the book, but I would like to know how you collaborate with the illustrator. Do you share notes, references, or just the manuscript?
Mm-hmm. In most cases, if you're the author and not an author illustrator, of course, you're just writing, not just, but you're writing the story, the words. Editors are not interested in your illustrator notes. And so they're kind of discouraged, actually, unless there's a reason that's not evident to the illustrator that you want this or that, or you would like this or that in place. Again, if it's not evident in the story, that's when you would insert an illustrator note. Often, in terms of collaborating, when a book comes together, the author and the illustrator do not meet, or if they do, it's after the book comes out, and now you're promoting the book. In some cases, and I've been fortunate, I think, with every book, that certain publishing companies and editors, through the editor, will send the author preliminary sketches that the illustrator has sent, like character sketches or just what spreads will look like, send them to the author for comments. The next level is more detail, and then finally color. And a lot of editors, in my experience now, are sending the author those along the way. So you can comment, but all the comments go back to the editor, who then goes back to the illustrator. So you're not in collaboration directly. With my last book, the one that I just told you about, Spanish as a Language of My Family, I told my agent, I really would love this book to be with Neil Porter, and I would love John Parra, who's a very prolific and great illustrator. I'd love for him to do it. And she said, "You're so cute, that you're dreaming like that." Well, he could pick up the book and John Parra illustrated it. And so, and now she tells me, keep dreaming those dreams, because sometimes they come true. Anyway, I mention all that because I flew to New York to meet them once all that came together. I couldn't have been more nervous. I almost threw up on the way to dinner, I swear, because Neil Porter and John Parra couldn't be nicer. Anyway, I mentioned that because after that dinner, John wanted to talk to me. And so he and I spent a lot of time on the phone talking about our family histories. Our families come from the same or neighboring little towns, pueblos in Mexico. It's crazy. And so that was very helpful, I think, to him to hear. I shared old family photographs with him of my grandmother and her sisters and my mom and aunt back in the day. And I think that really informed his template, the tone of the book and the colors. And so that was super unusual. That usually does not happen. And now we're friendly, and the book comes out in July, and
It comes out this July.
comes out
Oh.
next month, and
Fantastic.
just got a Kirkus starred review, so we're like super happy about that.
Awesome.
Kirkus is a reviewer, and another starred review today, actually. So we're very happy about that. And anyway, so sorry, I got a little off track. The author and illustrator collaborate, but kind of indirectly through the editor is really the main.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we're coming up on time now. It's 8:01. So let me just quickly show you the book for next month. It's called That Flag by Tamika Fryer Brown. And when I contacted her, she was like, it's not about the American flag, just so you know, like if you're thinking July 4th. And I was like, oh, no, I know what it's about. So we're going to read this book, and we're going to talk about flags and symbolism. And then my giveaway is a sticker kit, so you can make any kind of flag you want. And so we're going to talk about, what flags symbolize, good or bad. So I hope you guys will come back for July. I think Ellie's going to pick a winner. So I'm going to give away both books. And Michael had a great idea, which he mentioned. Once you enjoy it, if you want to ever pass it on, perhaps to a teacher or in an area that could use it. Then I'm also giving away sticker themed creativity for because it's the summer coming up. So Ellie.
Okay, so I think we had a little friend popped in the
I think Jenny's, right? Your little friend with Jenny.
little friend just popped his head. I don't know where he went, but I think there's someone there. So Jenny, we're going to you're the winner. So congratulations. I will email you to get the address.
And I'll send it out tomorrow.
Yep, Mia's so good at sending things. Congratulations. What's your name?
Oh, I think you're muted.
I'm Earl.
Hi, Earl.
Hey, Earl,
Nice
do you
to
like
meet
to do
you.
anything creative? Do you like to draw or do scratch art?
Yeah.
Perfect. Is there coming your way?
Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Another friend. Well, maybe it's for the whole family, right? Some sharing.
Oh, you guys are gonna enjoy
Mhm.
the books and all the coloring.
yeah.
That's great. Oh, nice. Well, I think you guys are gonna have a great time with that book in the box that Mia sends out every month to participants. So we thank you, Michael, for sharing your journey on how you wrote your books and how to give us really practical tips for being an ally. I'm going to definitely share that with someone, because I was like, someone asked me, I was like, well, I don't know. I think you just show up to events like this. This is where you learn and listen. And I think that's where it's a great way to just sit there and listen. And I think, people just need to be like you said, model that, so hopefully I'm modeling that for them.
But also, Michael, if you go to the dress, like I have a newsletter and Ellie has a newsletter for this group, Walking in Other People's Shoes. So we can put it in our next newsletter. It won't be in June, but I feel like we can be allies year round. It's not just Pride Month.
Yeah.
Totally.
So that would be great if you can share that.
Yes, thank you so much for Portia, our special guest
Yes, thank you.
facilitator as well. And yeah, it was such a great evening, a great way to start Pride Month. I hope you guys, continue to celebrate all month long. And I hope you guys check out the books in your local libraries or online and support Michael and his work as well. So thank you all for coming, and we're really excited for next month. But until then, we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Michael. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.